What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at the 1980 cult classic Prom Night, directed by Paul Lynch, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Prom Night tells the story of these friends who are stalked at their senior prom by a killer who is looking to seek vengeance for the death of a little girl that took place 6 years prior. And these friends being stalked are connected to said death. Okay, that's the overall premise of Prom Night. Let's briefly go over this movie. Overall, I thought Prom Night was okay. I was not overly impressed by this movie. I've seen better slashes of the 1980s that are much better that are much better. But with that being said, even though I wasn't over the moon with Prom Night, I didn't hate this movie. I thought that Prom Night was decent. It was okay. This is an okay slasher movie that came out 2 years after Halloween, so you see a lot of that Halloween influence in it. But Prom Night is like every movie that came out after Halloween. It's a movie that tries to emulate Halloween, but doesn't understand Halloween, and it uses slow burn to just create time filler. And to me, a lot of Prom Night is just a lot of time filler. I never really got a sense of dread or suspense when watching this movie. The characters in Prom Night, they're not really all that memorable, with the exception of Jamie Lee Curtis's character of Kim and the actor who played her brother Alex and her boyfriend Nick. Those are the only three characters that really stood out to me, and Leslie Nielsen, who makes an appearance in this movie. Other than that, everyone else, they just come across as very stock and generic. Their personalities don't really pop out the screen. They're just there to me. I mean, they do have. I'll say this: at least there's some chemistry with some of the friends, so at least you buy the performances. But in terms of like anyone who gave a stand-up performance, nothing really. Hell, even Jamie Lee Curtis, I didn't really give much of a stand-up performance in this movie. She was like, especially when you get near the end of the movie, this is big chase sequence that takes up a good chunk of the last half, and it doesn't even involve Jamie Lee Curtis. It involves another character. I mean, I think the decision making when it comes in terms of that aspect, you should have rotated it a little bit. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis is the star. So you want to give her the most screen time. I felt like she doesn't really get a chance to do much until like the last 5 minutes of the movie. That's just a gross underutilization of Jamie Lee Curtis, who was becoming quite popular because Halloween. Like I said, Halloween just came out 2 years later, so she was quickly establishing herself in the genre. So I'm not really sure the decision making when it comes in terms of that. When it comes to the killer of this movie, he is a clown. He is a joke. This guy is so clumsy, it's not even funny. The first time we see him, he kills this girl in a van, and he does this. What is this? What am I watching? Like, the guy literally just jumped up and with an axe, and he's like, and then like this guy is driving his van, and it rolls off a cliff and explodes. I didn't know vans can explode that bad. And then he starts to chase this girl, Wendy, who was the bitch of the movie, all throughout the school. And I'll say this scene, it has moments of suspense, but the chase with Wendy is so exhausting. It goes on forever. It gets to the point where you're just like, okay, can we just get this over with already? She literally gets chased all around the school into different places, classrooms, the shop, a storage cabinet, everything. It is the most prolonged chase I've ever seen in a horror movie. It stops being scary and it starts to get boring and monotonous. Like, oh my God. Not to mention, I don't feel the dread because the killer sucks. He's a clumsy fuck. He has an axe, and he's either getting tripped, he's either getting had, or he's just looking like a complete goofball. Most unintimidating killer ever. Yeah. The killer in this movie has no dread at all. Has nothing going for him. He sucks. And his outfit sucks. He's just wearing all black and a ski mask, looking like a ninja. Terrible. I would say this, the opening, I would say, I'm raking this movie over the coals because I just didn't really care for it that much. I thought it was okay. But that doesn't mean this movie is not without its positives. I like the opening prologue when we get to see the teenagers as little kids and we see the little girl, get fall to her death, which is what kickstarts the plot. Then we do a jump cut to 6 years later where everyone's in school and everyone starts getting these mysterious phone calls from a would-be from the would-be killer. I'll say this. The whole stuff with him giving the phone calls out, even though I thought he did a very over-the-top creepy voice, that helped in establishing, okay, this guy, this is like akin to like when a stranger calls and something like that. Like, this is where this killer could be somewhat intimidating when the movie goes on. Of course, he ends up not being intimidating at all. He ends up being a complete clown and a joke. But I do like it. I like the whole aspect of him sending out phone calls. I was actually liking this whole subplot of a bunch of the police investigating a child molester who was also an escaped psychiatric patient who was accused of possibly killing the little girl Robin. I wish that we would have gotten more of the police investigation, and not because that was actually the only interesting aspect of the movie that I was latching onto, that was actually catching my interest, because the stuff with the kids, it just played out like high school drama, and half the time you forget that you're watching a slasher movie because it's just like no kills happen until the last half hour of this movie. Like the first hour is just a drag. This movie drags a lot just to get to the big centerpiece of the prom. To me, how I would have did it, I would not have waited an hour to get to the prom. I would have got to the prom with, this is an hour and a half movie. I would have gotten to the prom between the half hour to 40-minute mark, and then I would have started having these kids get picked off one by one within that time frame. It would have made the movie flow so much better. Instead, the whole third act feels really, really rushed because they wasted so much time getting to this one moment. I am going to go against, I'll say this, Paul Lynch as a director, he didn't do a bad job directing. He did his best to try and create some atmosphere and suspense and some tension and some scenes, but this movie just drags its feet way too long, and it can get really monotonous and boring in a lot of areas, and the really bad acting does not help at all whatsoever. The only two decent actors are Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen. Hell, Leslie Nielsen's barely in this movie. He has like a handful of scenes. You forget that he's in it. And like I said, Jamie Lee Curtis is good, but the one big set piece that she should be in, where she can up the killer, she's not in. And when the killer attacks her and her boyfriend, it just looks so bad. Like the fight choreography in this movie, just all throughout, is just laughably bad. I understand it's 1980, but there were better movies that came out during this time period with better fight. So yeah, the would-be fight scene is atrociously bad. However, I did like the twist with when it's revealed that Alex was the killer, and the reason why he's doing it was because Robin is actually the sister of Alex and Kim. So I like that little twist, and I actually like how Kim looked into the killer's eyes and instantly knew that it was her brother. I actually thought that was well done. I actually thought the last 2 to 3 minutes when that happens is actually really well handled, and I enjoyed it. I ain't gonna lie. But other than that, I think Prom Night is just middling. I've seen better slasher movies made from this period. Jamie Lee Curtis has been in much better movies to this period. I understand the influence that Prom Night has had. I just wasn't over the moon for it, which is why I'm going to give it a solid 5 out of 10. It's a middling slasher movie. Watch it because of the influence. But if you just look at it by itself without its influence, it's an okay movie. It has stock characters. It has a really bad killer. It has some decent chase scenes here and there. It's got some decent directing and suspense here and there. Jamie Lee Curtis tunes in a good performance. Leslie Nielsen in a handful of scenes he has is okay. Certain aspects of this movie are good, but overall as a package, didn't really do much for me. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for Prom Night. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.